Good morning. Today we're going to do a design that I call the Oval Vortex, although it is probably being called lots of different names by different people. Brotherhood of the Oval is another one. Anyways, what I am starting with here is a white tee. It's been soaked in soda ash. It's been spun out, so it's just barely damp. That's how I like to do most of my folding. So what I'm going to do to start with is fold this in half, but instead of just a straight fold in half this way here, I'm going to find the center of the t-shirt here, and then I'm going to stick one sleeve inside the other. So here's the center of the front of the t-shirt. So I lined up those. I grabbed this middle. I'm lining up the collar here, and I got my seams right there. So that is going to be the center of the front of the tee. And now what I'm going to do is hold on to those in this hand, and I'm going to poke one sleeve through the other sleeve. And then at this point I'll let the top and bottom go, and I'm just going to focus on the sleeves for now. So I'm lining up the shoulder, the hem in the bottom of the sleeves here. Get those lined up nice and even. And once you have your sleeves lined up, then I'm going to go ahead and pick up that bottom part there, and we're going to smooth this out. There's lots of ways to do this. Sometimes I'll put the sleeves together and shake it, and sometimes I'll find the center. Just kind of find what works best for you. The main thing is if the t-shirt lays nice and smooth here, everything flattened out, sleeves tucked into each other, then you have a nice starting point. I can feel just a slight bit of a crease in there, so you can kind of fold this back, smooth that out. I like to have everything as nice and flat as possible before I start folding. So now what I have here is the front of the tee, and this is the back of the tee. So they're laying nice right together, and then of course the two sleeves are tucked one inside the other sleeve here. So what I'm going to do, make sure that front is lined up nice and even all the way down along the bottom here. Okay, so now for the oval part, I just take my washable marker. This here is called Crazy Art. I think I've also used Crayola. But the washable marker is what you want to use, and then I just draw an oval on to start with. That's going to be my folding line. I'm just going to do accordion fold. So I'm going to turn the t-shirt so that I can have the line that I'm working on basically coming straight towards me here. So I'm going to start with a accordion fold. I just fold that first edge under, maybe a ½ inch there, and then as I fold up, I'm basically trying to, let's turn this a little bit, trying to just keep this line lined up, so as you go up and down this line is going to remain straight all the way across the top there. So if you start getting off center here, I'm going to do it just a little weird just so you can see it. You can see that line there is not lining up. Here, let's zoom in a little bit. So you can see this line here is not lined up the way that I want it to. It's kind of going off at an angle. That's not what I want. So you just want to be kind of precise with your folding, because folding is what's going to get you your design. If you don't fold it correctly, then your design, when you lay your dies on, the dies won't go in the right places. So getting a nice fold is the key to one of the keys to a nice tie-dye. And I'm trying to also, as I'm working here, keep all the rest of this shirt folded up, because we're eventually going to fold up the whole shirt here. So I'm trying to, let's zoom back out, trying to keep this here nice and straight as I'm folding here. But this is the part that you want to focus on, and then you can straighten this out later. I just try to make sure that as I'm going, I have the these folds laying in here nicely because it makes it easier to fix later. So you just want to take your time and get your folds going nicely here. And sometimes they're just a little bit awkward out here because you have a little bit more fabric out here at the edge, so you have to kind of, sometimes it'll kind of go up at an angle here. This part's going to be thicker than this part, and that's fine. Okay. So I just keep moving this around so that this line is coming kind of straight at me here on the t-shirt. And sometimes you have to put in some extra folds back here just because of the extra amount of fabric here in the outside of the t-shirt compared to the little side, just because of the big corner here. So I just kind of add additional folds in here where needed, and they'll show up in the design, but you just have to keep folding up and just trying to get this here to lay as nicely as possible. The more time you spend working on your fold here, the better your design is going to come out. So this here is key to get some really nice folds going on so that your pattern is going to show up the way you want it to. But it just takes practice like anything else. I've been doing this design probably for 15 years now, and I still don't feel like I have it perfected the way I like, but I just keep at it. So once I get that folded up, I'm going to turn this around so that I can tie this part here up to start with, and then I'm going to straighten these out as I go. But I want to get these here tied in place just so that I don't have this part come unfolded on me. And I'm using kite string. If you haven't used kite string before, you don't have to use it. You can use rubber bands. I just like the kite string because there's no adjustment. I can tighten this up however much I want. But if you use a rubber band, sometimes a rubber band isn't going to fit on here, so then you have to double it up. And then that makes it tighter, which sometimes it's just fine, but sometimes it compresses it too tight and then your design changes. This way I can have pretty even tightness all the way along here, just because I can adjust the kite string how tight I want it. And I will put a link to my kite string or sinew video in the description in case you haven't seen that one yet. I explain how I use kite string and when I use kite string, so it kind of gives you an idea of what is best to use, kite string or sinew, and then how to use each one of them. Anyways, I'm rambling too much here. So we'll get the rest of this tied up now. So I just keep working all the way up here, and at some point I'm going to make some adjustments here in my folds, make sure that everything is laying nicely in there. Sometimes I'll get one that is taller than the other, so you can kind of even those out. And like I say, having this part already tied up makes it easier to adjust these without your whole pattern coming out. Another tool I like, it's a cuticle pusher. It has a nice soft, smooth edge on one side. It's got some grip here and then a smaller edge. But this here is something that allows me to kind of go in there, and I can tuck some of these folds down in a little bit deeper or open these up. So this here is a nice tool to work with, and it's not going to catch up on your t-shirt, tear holes in or anything. So I recommend getting a cuticle pusher. It has lots of nice functions in tie-dye or something similar to that. Main thing is that it has a smooth edge. It's not going to tear your t-shirt here. Okay, let's keep wrapping here. Like I say, sometimes here up at the top, or the edge of your tie-dye where you have more fabric, you might need to add some extra creases in that aren't continuations of these. But it just brings everything together nicer if you can keep it laying nice and flat. Okay, so now there is your oval, and now we're going to put some dyes on here. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with my black first. And you can go along and draw lines out here, how wide you want your blocks on here, or you can just go for it. And I tend to just kind of go for it in a lot of instances. So we're just going to do that. So what I'm going to do is dye a line. I'm just going to dye a space and leave a space. And I'm doing that down here at the end. I try to make sure that I'm not saturating the black all the way down because I'm going to alternate my colors. So on the other side of this, I want to have room, because whatever color, I think I'll probably use green on this one. But whatever color I put on there, I want it to have some room here at the end to saturate in, just to complete your pattern out. So I'm just going to leave a space each time I put a row of color on here. Right now I'm not saturating it heavily, I'm just getting the dye on there. This one here, if I put too much of the black in to start with, it might spread and take up all of these white spaces. So to start with, I'll put one layer of dye on there, and then I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to put the black on the other side. I just find it easier for myself rather than trying to have the other color in there, because then they start spreading more. If you can just get the darker color, the black, on first, then whatever color you add in, you can fill in all the rest of the spaces with it. And then I'll go back and I'll add a little bit more black into my design. But to start with, just a light coating of the black, just enough to set your lines and get your spaces started. What I'm going to do is dye opposite. So instead of in the same places where I put the black dye, I'm going to dye in between on this side. So last time I started right down here at the tip, so this time I'm going to start a little bit back from it. And then I can see my black lines right here all the way up. So I'm going to go in between those lines each time and do the same thing on this side I did on the other side. Just one space over. So this here is also how you dye the DNA. You just have to alternate your spaces on top and bottom. And since we're only doing two colors, I can just alternate back and forth with this. And doing the black all at the same time just helps me see where I need to put my dyes down at. So that's just a personal choice. But it also helps with the design, because if you get too much dye in there, then it might spread out more than what you want. Alright, let me fill my bottle. Okay, so I had to fill my bottle. Partly, I like to, when I'm doing a design like this, I don't start with a completely full bottle of dye. And that, I feel, helps me kind of control how much. I want the dye to come out nice and slow here. And if you have a completely full bottle, then just the weight of the dye itself is going to possibly push the dye out faster than what I want. So if I'm not using a tiny dye bottle, which if I was using one of those, it might take me forever because I'd have to keep refilling it. But with the big one, you can still control how much dye comes out just by having a half of a bottle of dye instead of a full bottle. And then I just don't tip it all the way up. It's just something you work with, and with some practice you can do the same thing. Alright, I have my colors on there, so now I'm going to pick my other colors here. Okay, so I'm going to go with green on this one. So now I'm going to go along and color all of the white spaces with green. And once again, I don't want to oversaturate this just yet. So I'm going to put about the same amount of dye from the green that I did of the black. And I'm also going to add a little bit of purple in here just for a little bit of pizzazz. So I basically left one white space, and I'm going to leave another one right here. And you'll see how that turns out. But I just want to add just a little something extra to this one. You can go along and do it just completely in the greens. And now I want to have my purple spaces close in design here. So what I'm going to do is color those first. So I think I'm going to color these three. So on one side I did 2 of the purple. On this side I'm going to do 3 of the purple. Okay, now I'm going to go back through and I'm going to add one more coating of each of the colors. So I'm just going to put another layer of black on, flip it, do the black on the other side, and then I'm going to go back through and recolor the green and the purple. And just from my own experience of having done this for a while, and also just looking at how the dye is soaking in, that should be good enough for me. Another thing you can do is you can use your cuticle pusher to open up one of these creases here and see just how far your dye saturation has gone in there. So maybe I'll do that after I finish this row of black. Alright. Okay, so let's open this up just a little bit here. So I can see my line of color right down in there. So I know that that's good. There's, let's see, yeah, it's about the width of my cuticle pusher. Well, so the space of white that I have is about as wide as the cuticle pusher is, this distance here. So I think that's pretty good. The dye is going to spread a little bit more in there, and that should take care of that white space, although I do like just a little bit of white on my oval vortexes just to make them pop a little bit more. So now I'm going to coat the back side with some black. Alright, so now I'm going to let this sit up for 48 hours, and then I will wash it out and I will post the results at the end of this video. So from your standpoint, in just a few seconds you'll see what this looks like. Thank you for watching. Please share my videos and I'll keep making more.